Welcome back to our study in the book of Daniel. And today we will be doing the first half of chapter 11. This is the outline we've been using, and as you can see, we're way over into the next to the last chapter. So this will cover a time period from Darius the Mede to destruction. And destruction is Antiochus Epiphanes. These are some of the things that you can pause and look at, but these are on all of our lessons as we work our way through. We're in the last subsection of chapters 10, 11, and 12. It's the visions of Daniel, the man. We know that, as I've already mentioned to you, the title of this is Darius the Mede, or Darius to Destruction. Or we also, I've titled it this, Chronology of Cruddy Kings, because there aren't any good ones here. There's just a lot of fighting and killing, and Israel's in the middle. These are the four great rulers that Daniel served under. All of them knew of Jehovah God, and some of them believed. These are prophecies of the overthrow of not just Persia, but also some real problems with Egypt. Daniel's 84. Our time is dated at 536 before Christ. This covers from 539 to about 164 before the Lord, and between this and the 12th chapter, there are over 100 prophecies that are fulfilled. Amazing. No, I'm not pointing them all out. So before we get into the very first half of this book, I want to share some things with you. And right before we started this chapter to record it, I jotted down these three things. Okay, number one, this is loads of history, primarily featuring the north, which is the Syrian kingdom. That's one of the four breakaways from King Alexander the Great when he died, and the second one, the south, or the Egyptian kingdom. Israel is in the middle, right between both of them. So if we think this is all about Gentiles, it's not. If we think it's all about these two kingdoms, it's a lot about them as far as book and history, but Israel's right in the middle. So it's really about God's people. That's why this is here. Number two, this is a countdown to Antiochus Epiphanes. It's a detailed one. It's his bloodline. And number three, there are several ways we can approach this, and I thought, should I make this really super scholarly? And I did. And then I looked at it and I thought, you know what? We'll get so wrapped up in these little things that we're not going to grasp the main thoughts. And so I put this statement in. If you're a student of the Word of God, take it slow. This is the chapter of Daniel that most people will not read the whole thing through. And you'll see as we get into this why it is said that. This is the chapter when I'm reading my Bible through in a given year that I speed read, and meaning I don't get a whole lot out of this one. So there is more than any one teacher can teach in this, and that's why I have several sources. My bibliography would be great just in chapter 11. There's a lot of thought in this, and there's a lot of great history. I mentioned battles and fights, but I don't go into them, but you could. I don't have any maps for any of them. So there's some things that are not there so that we can get into what the Scripture is saying. And even though it is talking about the North fighting the South, or Greece enters into this, Asia Minor, some of the cities there, and even Rome pops in, that we need to keep focused on the Lord, upon Israel, upon the picture of the Antichrist, Antiochus Epiphanes IV, and then just rejoice in the history that we're able to read about. All right, so let's get into this. In the first 20 verses, it's all about Alexander the Great and his predecessors. It's his bloodline, and that it's very heavy that way. It is through this line of the kingdom of the north, the Syrians, that the Antiochuses come through. And so we begin scripture with this. Also, I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I, this is Daniel, stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now I will show you the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. So we are past now Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar, and we're past Darius the Mede. We're past in this listing. It's a future listing of Daniel. Daniel would be talking about Darius the Mede in verse 1, but this is Darius the Great later on, the very powerful one. And so you see Ahasuerus, Artaxerxes, Darius the Great, and Xerxes. These really are the 4 great latter Persian power people. And we find them all in the Ezra, Nehemiah, and the Esther time block. And Xerxes, the last, is the most powerful and richest of them all. So the second thing we need to read about Alexander, his rise and his fall. And we are only reviewing. We have had this before, but let's get into it though. And a mighty king shall stand up, that's Alexander the Great, that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. In 333 BC, Alexander invaded Persia to avenge the wrongs to Greece by Persia from Xerxes and his recently past invasion. What happens is Xerxes sends a fleet of ships, and a large fleet, thinking he can take Greece and expand the empire. He loses tragically, and the ships and the army come home with their tails between their legs. But Xerxes throws a feast and claims great victory. All right, Alexander does his will as the notable horn in Daniel 8, 6 and 7, and also chapter 8, verse 21. So here's the rise of the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, not to any of his ancestors, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. So this moves very quickly. When Alexander dies, it's divided among his 4 generals. Philip, Alexander the Great's half-brother, and Alexander II, his son, Hercules is his illegitimate son. They're all murdered. There went his posterity. They're gone. And so it's divided among Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. I have dotted them with a red dot of how the empire all broke up. And in a minute, you're going to see another one. But keep in mind the gold and yellow with the huge amount. You can see the old Persia empires are there. Babylon is in that area. And then to the far left, you see the red star with Egypt. And a little bit above for instance, the island of Cyprus in the Mediterranean Sea. And then in Cilicia, you see up that is a part of Asia Minor. That all went to that general. Those are the 2 empires or kingdoms that we're going to be dealing with. And you notice with the arrow right in the middle, that's Israel. And so One of the things that we need to understand and to grasp in this study, that the Seleucus kingdom, who is one of the generals, becomes and is the king of the north, and his capital is in Syria, not way east, but way, way west. And then we read about the Ptolemies of Egypt. They are the king of the south. Now, I understand Ptolemy's higher up on the map, the print is, but we're talking about Egypt down below. And so you say, well, why is it north and south? Well, grasp, first of all, where the Seleucus kingdom is reigning from in Syria, which is just north of Israel. That's where Syria even sits today, a lot of it. And then look at Egypt. It is more south than it is west for the embodiment of it. And so for them to meet and to go to battle, they have to go through Israel. They have to basically go more north and south. Then it's not even close about going east and west. And so that's what the scripture says. And the king of the south shall be strong in your mind. Where geographically is this? The southern kingdom are the Ptolemies, okay? And one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. So the king of the south is Ptolemy III, that is going to be the most dynamic one of them all. And his prince, Seleucus, the Cator, seized Syria in 311 before Christ. Now, I've taken a map and I've put them side by side. If you almost could divide to the left-hand side of the coin, draw a line down through there. To the left is a southern kingdom, and to the right is the northern kingdom. I put a blue arrow on Antiochus IV Epiphanes because that's where we're headed. And so we open up with Ptolemy III on the throne, and he reigns a long time. And he will be dealing with Seleucus I and the Antiochuses and some more of the Seleucuses, and pretty much none other are named that until after Antiochus Epiphanes. And so in verses 6 and 7, there's an ultimate alliance of Ptolemy and Seleucus. And in the end of years, they shall join themselves together. For the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north and make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm. But she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. All right, how do you sort this all out? There's a marriage between Antiochus II of Syria and Bernice, the daughter of the king of the south. Let's look at this on here. Okay, do you see relationship to Ptolemy III? All right, then we look over to the far right. We are down to Antiochus II, and we're under the way there. In 248 BC, Ptolemy II dies, and Bernice's husband, and this is some back area here. If I can go back up to the map, you can see the Ptolemy that's right up above. Okay, and Ptolemy III and Bernice are the offspring. And so he dies, and Bernice's husband, Antiochus II, divorced her. He then, in turn, remarried his former wife, Laodice. Laodice poisons her husband, Antiochus II, and has Bernice murdered. Laodice appoints her son, Seleucus II, to become the king of Syria. Okay, let's back up again. And you see how we got to Antiochus II very quickly, and we can see Bernice over on the other side. Laodice is not mentioned, but however, let me say something to you there quickly. How about Laodicea? Remember the church up in Asia Minor? Okay, the Ptolemies were up there and they conquered that area, and they named, he named that city after his wife, Laodicea. So the Laodicean church we read about in Revelation, that's all, that's her. And her namesake, the city was named after her. Okay, let's move on. But out of a branch of her root shall one stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail. You see, what happens is, this is, until we get to Antiochus Epiphanes, this is just fighting back and forth between the two empires, jockeying, maneuvering through marriages. And what happens later on then, Ptolemy III, which is the power now, and brother Bernice, he conquers Syria. And so in a minute, we'll see the graph again of Ptolemy Eugetes is the brother of Bernice, succeeding in the place of Ptolemy II, Philadelphus. He avenged her death by overrunning Syria, even to the Euphrates. He just took his giant army and he kills Laodicea. I'm sorry, I was back to the Laodiceans in my mind. So this is all these battles and the movement that I've not showed to you, just so we can keep moving. Now in verses 8 to 11, it's all about the Egyptians, their plunder of Syria. Now they're getting something, Syria's getting something returned back to them. So see, as I said, this goes back and forth, back and forth. And in a few minutes, we'll start seeing that all of a sudden they make stopovers. They go through Israel. And no, there's not much said because they have their eye on killing somebody that's in charge of Syria or in charge of Egypt. But every now and then they stop and they take plunder out of Israel and they annex her. And so she gets pulled between being property of Syria, the north, or Egypt, the south. And shall also carry away captives into Egypt, their gods, with their princes and with their precious vessels of silver and of gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. All right, so remember, Ptolemy lives a long time. That's who he's talking about. And so when he leaves Egypt and he comes up into Syria and he conquers all the way back to where Babylon basically was. He comes home and he's carrying 2,400 idols into Egypt of spoil. Now, it's not so much the idols, it was the gold and the silver. And the king of the south, Ptolemy III, outlives his rival, and peace exists for a short time. And Ptolemy III reigns for 46 years in total. So the king of the south shall come into his kingdom and shall return into his own land. So the summary, this is the summary of verses 7 and 8. The king of the south attacks Syria. Then because of sedition, he hears back home. He has to come home and return home. So that's where we leave that. Verse 10, but his sons shall be stirred up and shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overflow and pass through. Then shall he return and be stirred up even to his fortress. So we're not done with the battles. All right? Ptolemy III is gone. But, and we probably need to drop down and look over here at the Seleucuses, and we see the second here. We've not gone anywhere, and we see Antiochus III, who is the great, and he will live long now. And so we're down to the fourth in the southern kingdom in Egypt, but now something's brewing here. So of the two sons of Seleucus II, you can see Antiochus III and Seleucus III. One at the third, he invades Judah, but he makes a treaty with them. He says, all right, you're on our side. We'll keep you in peace. And in 210, he attacks Rafia near Gaza, a fortress of Egypt. But see, he uses Israel now, or Judah, as a staging area. Let's go on. And you see Rafia on the map. And the king of the south, now that's Egypt, shall be moved with choler, he's anger, it's hot, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north, and he shall set forth a great multitude. So they bring big armies. But the multitude shall be given into his hand. So Ptolemy IV, Philopator of Egypt, defeats the king of the north at Rafia. So Egypt wins on this onslaught that comes on. Antiochus III, the king of Syria, the north, had a force of 70,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry. 10,000 of Antiochus's army were slain, and 4,000 were made captives. Ptolemy IV wins, and he wins big with an inferior army. And so there's unsuccessful revenge of Syria on Egypt. So if we could review quickly, Seleucus II attacks Ptolemy III in Egypt. It fails. Seleucus dies and is replaced with Antiochus III. He rules Syria from that time on. And when he was taken away, the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. So Ptolemy IV annexes Israel into Egypt. He makes a quick, bad treaty with Syria, which takes the dynamic victory that he gives ground away. He doesn't give Israel away, but he gives ground away. And so what happens is Ptolemy IV, still on the throne, persecutes thousands of Jews in the city of Alexandria. And that's where the Jews in Israel fled, because it was a safe haven. And they were more than welcome through any of the Ptolemies when all this stuff was going on. But now, because Syria has the alliance with Israel, Ptolemy says, I can get a further victory here, and he persecutes the Jews. Because one, no longer was the nation of Israel in a line with them, but also he had made a trip to the temple in Jerusalem according to the 3rd Maccabees. And he was struck with paralysis when trying to enter the temple at Jerusalem. It's almost like God did that to him. For the king of the north shall return. Now he's coming back. And shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, bigger army, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army with much riches. So Antiochus III, king of the north, after 14 years amasses a greater army to conquer Egypt, which has a weak king. Antiochus III makes war with Ptolemy V, EPIPHANES. He's the son of Philopator, and he is just a child. No wonder he's going to win. So here's some of the recaps. Ptolemy III dies and succeeded by his son Ptolemy IV. A few years later, Antiochus III the Great and Ptolemy IV face off in a crucial battle at Rafia. They both use elephants that I didn't mention to you, but Ptolemy IV mops up. But then again, Syria attacks a child king and Ptolemy V, and there are problems, and the arrow, I've left it up at the 4th, and I will move it in the next graphs. And in those times there shall be many stand up against the king of the south. So all of a sudden this gang tackle Egypt. Also the robbers of your people shall exalt themselves to establish a vision, but they'll fall. So the Syrians make a treaty with Philip of Macedon, that's north of them, against Egypt. Wealthy Jews who fled Egypt to build a temple there rebel against Egypt when Syria commences the invasion. However, Isaiah 19 says the Jews will suffer and do suffer greatly. So now there's civil war in Egypt. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand. neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. So Antiochus III momentarily occupied by attack from Pergamum. And that is sort of like, it's something that comes in that's a distraction for him. And yes, that's the Pergamum of the area and the town in the book of Revelation. And again then attacks Egypt in 198 before Christ and defeats Ptolemy V and his ally Scopas at Paneas, and he retakes Israel from Egypt. So now we're down to the 5th. Okay, Syrian occupation of Israel. But he that comes against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land, that's Israel, which by his hand shall be consumed. All of Israel is under the power of the Syrians and Antiochus the Great at this time. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do. And he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her, but she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. All right, so let's sort this out. Antiochus III, after some time here, things are at peace and Egypt has been put in her place. Antiochus III plans to conquer Egypt by trickery. His daughter Cleopatra is given in marriage to Ptolemy V. Okay, that's a child king, and he's still alive. He let him age. This arrangement had the appearance of being equal, and just we're all one happy family now. But it failed. Cleopatra aided her husband against her father. So there she married Ptolemy V, and she's going to turn on Antiochus. After this shall he turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many, but a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him. So Antiochus III invades Asia Minor here and takes the Aegean islands. He's not worried about Egypt, even though Cleopatra is turning on him. The Roman general Scipio Assaticus, in 190 BC, he causes Syrian reproach to Rome to turn on itself, and Antiochus is overwhelmed in defeat at the Battle of Magnesia. So he's bit off too much. He's insulted the Romans and a Roman general. Rome is not in charge yet, but do you see do you see things starting to shift now out of Greece being the power of the world? It's slowly crumbling on both sides, or in fact on all four of the former generals. They're long gone. But now Rome is starting to take a stronghold into areas. Then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. So in 188 BC, Antiochus III the Great joins forces with exiled Hannibal from Carthage. They invade Greece, but are driven totally out of that part of the world by Rome. A year later, Antiochus the Great is murdered after returning to his fortress at Antioch for plundering the temple of Belus, but the temple was not there. It was part of Rome and Greece. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So at 176 BC, Heliodorus is sent by Seleucus IV as a tax collector. Seleucus IV, after an 11-year reign, is poisoned by this tax collector. So here we are, down to Antiochus III, and we're looking over at Ptolemy over on the other end. And let me back up just a second. You can see the timeline above the red arrow. It says Seleucus III. Well, right below what the red arrow now is covering is Seleucus IV. He reigns in the place of Antiochus III, but he has a brother. And so he's been murdered now, and he's dead. And the red arrow shoots us over directly to the next ruler and the next king of the north and of Syria. And that's Antiochus Epiphanes IV. And guess who that is? So we're going to wrap it up for right now. Now that was general history. That was and a little bit of specific. But as I mentioned to you up front, it's to whet your appetite. It's to sort of get you, as it did me, as I took the time to study this and more in depth, but it took me off of complacency just to read it through and say, so what? I don't read about any Bible characters there. Yes and no, but mainly not. But we see God's hand at work, and how Antiochus Epiphanes pops on the scene, and we see the lineages of that. So I want to thank you, and stay with us. We'll finish this chapter in our next teaching, and these lessons are done live in my church's adult Bible class. So it's a thrill and a privilege to share this with you. May God bless you, and I'll see you for the remainder of this chapter.